What does world building give you personally, in your view?
There is it gives me a feeling of satisfaction that I understand a place. I understand how things work. Now, I'm cheating. They work that way because I made them work that way. But it gives me that feeling of, okay, I know where I stand here. I know what's going on, which in real life you often don't.
Yes, you. Is it hard work to be a world builder and maintainer?
Okay. It is. Uh, it doesn't feel hard to me.
Hmm.
Um, because I never stop doing it. And I get daily bombarded with questions. The hard bit is I can usually remember what I added to the world. What other people have added doesn't necessarily stick in my head. Or I get this vague memory. Wait a minute. Dragon 48. Somebody mentioned something. Damn. You know, it is a lot of hard work, but I'm used to it. So it isn't, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. You started when you were a child, is that correct? You were
I was
7,
five.
5 years old.
I was just creating a story world, a fantasy world for my own entertainment. And it was from the very beginning, I was borrowing the concept that William Morris, um, The Wood Between the Worlds, and that's actually one of his novels. And he was the first guy to publish novels as novels.
Hmm.
Um, and Clive Staples Lewis, C.S. Lewis, stole it for The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. There's actually a scene, I believe it's in The Magician's Nephew, where they go through the wood. Um, anyway, I borrowed that and put all the fantasy settings from Amber, which was just starting to come out, Roger Zelazny's Amber, to Middle Earth, to a lot of the other settings, and put them all in one glorious interconnected multiverse.
First of all, how did you keep track? Because presumably you didn't write stuff down that young. Were
Oh
you
yeah,
visualizing? You did write stuff down.
oh yeah, yeah, from the
Okay.
beginning.
Okay.
Um, uh, I would come pounding up the stairs to my father in the living room. He'd usually have guests over and be rather embarrassed as I came pounding up the stairs, waving a pulp paperback I'd found in the den. The den was where we were allowed to hang out and also play piano because we were taking piano lessons, all of us kids. And it was also where my father's gentle reading library was, as in, when you collect books and you read them for pleasure, you never have enough space. So my father built bookshelves by height to cram books in. So therefore, it was a potpourri, and I was just reading everything.
Hmm.
And he placed no restrictions on what we read. So I would be pounding up the stairs with Owl Hoot Trail. She was staked out nude in the sun to die, which was a 1930s or 40s pulp, and I'd be waving it and saying, "Hey, Dad, where's the next one? This is great." And he'd be going, and to get rid of me, he'd say something like, "Oh, son, if you want another one, you're gonna have to, because I was always asking, what happens next?" And he'd say, "Well, if you want to find out, you're going to have to write it yourself. That author died in 1938. Okay, I'd say, and pound back down the stairs. There was a um, folding table set up. It was a cheap, but of its age, so it had metal corners and heavy wood construction, folding table with four legs and a chess or checkerboard lacquered into the top. And it was covered with brown paper bags. When you went shopping for groceries in those days, they were all always given to you in brown paper bags. My Aunt Claire, who was raising us kids after my mom died, lived through two world wars and a depression on a farm. So you didn't throw anything away. And when she was finished putting the groceries away, she took her kitchen cleaver, which was a sharpened so many times that it was a needle machete, taken from a German body corpse in the war, and she'd slit the brown paper bags up the side, and then she'd iron them on the ironing board along with our clothes. And then she would put them downstairs on the table with an engineer's pencil,
Mm.
one of those ones that can't roll because it's got a flat sides, for me, and crayons for my younger sisters. And that's what you wrote on. And she taught me how to write. You wrote all the way down the page, then you turned the page and you wrote across. And then you turned it on the diagonal and wrote across. And then you turn it on the diagonal again and wrote across. And then you put a little arrow at the end of your thing and flipped it over to the blank side and did that all over again because paper was expensive and no farmer ever bought paper when he could get brown paper bags for free, in quotation marks. So I was writing everything from a very young age. And the other thing that happened, my father was a prof at a university. And by then they'd graduated to pre-printed exam books, which had ruled paper, and you had to write your answers in the exam. And the whoever was presiding over the exam collected all the books and then collected all the blank ones. So to prevent cheating, to prevent somebody taking an exam away, copying out five of them, and then handing in perfect exam. But my father grew up also through depression times and lean times. So he didn't want to throw anything away. He was supposed to throw all the blank exam books in the garbage. And it was like, that's wicked. That's sinful. So what he did was kept them at home as scrap writing things. So when I started into my quote literary career, I was writing in exam books. And then as I started DMing, I would longhand write as we were playing. So and so lost 5 hit points. So and so met this wizard, and then a little one-line description, blah, blah, blah. So I had all that stuff. So I was always writing as we played. I started with uh, Waterdeep
Okay.
and Undermountain, in the
Okay.
Dungeon of the Crypt, and the Company of Crazed Venturers. Um, they adventured there. One of them married an elf princess. They rescued an elfin princess, and she just wanted to get the heck out of there to Evermeet, and he went with her to woo her, and it all ended happily, and he therefore left the campaign. That was Trunian Regalis, the thief of the rogue in today's parlance, thief at the time in the party. So um, Undermountain, Waterdeep, Evermeet,
Mm.
but just for like 3 scenes, like good old Shakespeare's Exeunt pursued by a bear. That off went Trinian, and then we shifted to the Dales for a library campaign,
So when
Shadowdale.
right, so you were building this from the age of 5. Um, First of all, a bit of a crazy question. Did you feel compelled to do so?
Yeah, I just wanted to have a okay. When I was 5 and 6, this is before the game, I was writing fantasy short stories. And like the Fawford and Grey Mouser stories that I was reading in Fantastic, um, they were self-contained episodes in the lives of recurring characters. But if you read more than one, you realized they were in the same setting, and you also realized you were being told little bits and pieces about the setting behind the story, over the shoulders of the main characters. So I started doing the same thing, and it was following Mert, the moneylender, my first Realms character, who was a cross between Shakespeare's Falstaff, um, Poul Anderson's Nicholas Van Ryn from the Pulsotechnic League science fiction series, and Guy Glen Guy Gilpatrick's Glencanon, um, who he wrote stories for men's magazines about a drunken Scottish engineer who is always sipping Duggan's Dew of Kirkintilloch in the engine room of a tramp freighter as it made its way around our real world oceans. And he was swindling this and so. So I put them all together. And Mert was swindling his way down the Sword Coast, starting in the remote north, and then he worked his way down to Waterdeep. So I was the very first thing was port by port, because at the end of every Mert story, he had to leave town hastily, one floppy sea boot ahead of um, his new enemies he'd made during the story, his rivals and previous enemies, and the local authorities. So he had to keep moving. So I got him to Waterdeep and then figured Waterdeep is big enough that he could hide there or blend in, or he could make it his home for several stories. So that's where he stayed. And Durnan, the thinking man's Conan, because I wanted a barbarian in build like Conan the Barbarian, but I didn't want the noble savage fish out of water. I wanted somebody who had the build like that, but was really planning on becoming an investment broker and marrying his childhood sweetheart. So he has the physique, but this is not Frazetta. Oh, a different woman wrapped around my ankles every 5 seconds. Oh, I'll kill another evil wizard and then take his loot. No, no, no. This is Durnan. He wanted to make enough money adventuring so he could buy a tavern and settle down with his childhood sweetheart. And the moment he and Mert made enough money in Undermountain, he turned to Mert, shook his hand, said, "Okay, I'm retiring." This was great, but and he bought the Yawning Portal and settled down. And of course, TSR did not publish any of that because who wants a hero who's smart enough, an adventurer, to retire when he's still alive? No, no, no. We don't want that out there as an example.
If I was to conclude at this stage of our chat straight away, I would say that The Realms was born out of a love of fiction and a desire to create a coherent um, cast of characters within a setting. You had no idea about games, obviously, at this stage. You were just thinking about world and people.
Yeah, gaming to me, okay. Gaming was board games.
Hmm.
It was Kriegspiel
Hmm.
because my father was in the military, so I had been exposed to Kriegspiel, which
Hmm.
of course, if you're in Boy Scouts or whatever, is called broken telephone. It's the same thing. It's seeing how as you pass messages along, how distorted they get. And Donald Featherstone uh, had written and published oodles of miniatures wargaming books, so I bought the Airfix figurines and I played those. Many of them were suitable for solo, and my father taught me again how you play a two-person game solo. Like he actually had a turntable for a chessboard, and we do a move, and then he turned the and said, "Okay, you do the other side. Now turn it around again. You do the other side." I mated myself many times. No, but you would literally do this thing where you ran around the table and took the other side, and I'd say it's not as fun,
Hmm.
and he'd say, "Yes, son, but you have to learn how to entertain yourself, and you also have to learn that you like yourself and to spend time with yourself and that you're good company. Because if you are all those things, you will be in life too. So do it." And then he'd take off because he was terribly busy. That was his problem. And he could see my problem was loneliness.
Hmm.
So he was going to take care of both these things and equip me. So uh, I did manage to get in some games, but role playing games as we knew them were a decade in the future. And yes, I fell onto the wagon as the stuff came out, um, and played D&D in the realms. And we were playing regularly by 1978, which is when my current campaign started.
Your current campaign.
Yes, 1978 till now.
That's 1 year younger than me. Okay.
Hi!
One more question about the gaming, if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, I don't mind.
Before D&D, did you ever think, oh, let's do a war game scenario in a Realms setting?
Oh, yes.
Ah,
Yeah. And we did a few of those, and somewhere in this house, I don't know where they've gotten to because I had to move rooms about 8 times, like where my office was. But there were at one point a row of five 90-minute cassette tapes, both sides, where um, the Zentrum were attacking Shadowdale, and the Knights of Mithranor were leading Shadowdale's meager militia and the elves who were helping them and so on to try and fend off the Zents. And psionic combat was going on, and this was first edition. Well, okay, this was AD&D.
Mm.
And we were arguing about how psionics worked all the way through it, which is why we kept the tapes. And they are hilarious because they're sort of like, excuse me, it's sort of like upper crust Edwardian or Victorian gentlemen. It strikes me that you may have made a fundamental error. Now, forgive me. We could be seeing this differently, And there was tons of that going on. Just roll, da, 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 and in the background, yes, but about the psionic. So it it is a laugh riot to listen to if you have all that time. Uh, but we were doing that sort of gaming. We were doing, and I'm afraid I wasn't using chainmail, and battle system did not yet exist. Um, I was using modified Featherstone. And what we were doing was troop movements, but where your individual characters have free will and are role playing and moving around as they see fit in between the ongoing troop movements. And what rapidly became apparent was they were wasted as unit commanders because they were stuck with their command. But if they were just bombing around the battlefield, flying here, flitting there with teleports and dimension doors, doing all sorts of things like blowing up siege engines, um, destroying battering rams, all that stuff, they were quite effective. So we had lots of battles of that sort. And we would also do Featherstone's modified campaign that went with the Kriegspiel. Now, the although Kriegspiel has a German name, it started, as far as we can tell, with the Roman Empire. They did it, okay? And the Kriegspiel German name doesn't come from Hitler. It comes from Napoleonic times, the German high command then. And Featherstone redid it so you have two groups of people, the two opposing forces, in different physical locations. Like if you're doing it at an army camp or just a camp, like a Butlins, for instance, they're in different buildings, and you have runners that go from buildings, but they each have a copy of the same map of the area, and the map is ruled with pencil and paper into a grid. And at the time of Featherstone, everybody smoked. Donald smoked a pipe, and there were no match books unless you were going to a very high class London or Parisian restaurant. There were boxes of matches, little tiny ones, about yay big, matchboxes. You glued them together into a dresser for your sister's dollhouse. But you could also make a dresser that corresponded to the grid you'd drawn on the maps. And then you stole some tiddlywinks or poker chips from the household supplies of different colors. So each of the two opposing forces, if you only had two, had different colors. And they moved on the map with the intel they were getting with the runners from the Kriegspiel, and they put their tiddlywinks in a dresser drawer. And if you opened the dresser drawer and your opponent's tiddlywink was already in there, you stopped, you looked at that piece of map, you you turned your sand table into a simulation of the terrain in that square or rectangle, whatever it was, and you laid minis on the board and you fought a battle. We did that in the realms on several occasions to decide. And then we did it with the ongoing role playing campaign. So instead of me as the dungeon master by fiat saying, "Oh, the Zentrum won, the Waterdavian forces lost," no, we'd actually play the battle. And then everybody felt that it was fair and the result had worked out and blah, 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 blah. And we then used it as part of the established history of the campaign. So we were working our games in and actually making a campaign of wargaming with miniatures on sand tables. which, by the way, my very first Gen Con 8, in the Horticultural Hall in Lake Geneva, I walked into the room. There was one ping pong table and five sand tables, and they were playing chainmail. And
Hmm.
there was an English Civil War Cavaliers and Roundheads. There was something, I don't know what it was, but it had Swedish Landsknet with pikes lowered in a case of pikes in a square with cavalry assaulting them. I never knew what that game was. I didn't go that far across the room. I was a little kid. Um, and so yeah, lots of people were doing this, integrating. Anyway, and chainmail, that's what D&D grew out of. So it was an attempt to make your character have a life.
And were you doing that before 1974?
Oh yeah, I was doing that stuff before 1974. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really interesting.
Not with the role playing as a game in mind. The role playing was, here's what my characters are doing. I suppose if you tried to look at it in an academic way, which we did not at the time, it's the great man theory as opposed to the inevitable sweep and force of nature. You know, you were just in the right place at the right time. It's the fact that with our free will, we can affect history.
Hmm.
So what we were doing was playing interesting people, not necessarily leaders, because one of the things that all of my friends figured out fairly early on was it's not good to be king. If you sit on the throne, you've painted a target on your front and back. It's ever so much better to manipulate at court and get everybody to do your bidding and not be there. Because if you have no ambitions to money and power, then people aren't going, damn Borgias again, or damn Medici's. Oh, no, no, we just got to get rid of them. No, 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 no. Because you're not high enough profile to make any of those enemies. You're just, what you want to happen happens. And the people you want eliminated, you maneuver them into conflicts with each other. So they'll destroy each other or at least occupy each other, and you get what you want. So they were all trying to become these Machiavellian people who controlled the setting, which, by the way, didn't mean we went and did it in real life afterwards. What it did was give us great distaste for people like that, and
That's
also made it easy for us to spot them.
that's interesting. So you considered the gaming practice for real life, actually, even though the pretend world aided real world interaction.
Yeah, it did aid. I don't think that any of us were formally looking at it as training for real life. It was still fun,
Hmm.
but it was also, let's flex these muscles, which we never get to do in real life. In the same way that if you read, say, any heroic tale, whether it's fantasy or otherwise, you're probably not going to get all these opportunities in life to shine in front of the girl you want, to save this thing, to dramatically take down the villain. Life usually just doesn't work like that. If you do get those chances, nobody's watching. They're all somewhere else. So I mean,
So the biggest and hardest question I have for you is this is probably the perfect lead into it, which is what does world building give you personally, in your view?
there is it gives me a feeling of satisfaction that I understand a place. I understand how things work. Now, I'm cheating. They work that way because I made them work that way. But it gives me that feeling of, okay, I know where I stand here. I know what's going on, which in real life you often don't. You just think you're another one of the sheep and things are pretty bad this morning. You know, you're being herded or you're being manipulated. To give you a real world example, every single year for the last 2 decades of my life, I have seen stories in our local business papers where I am in Canada about how the coffee crop has failed, so the price of coffee is going to soar. And I know damn well it hasn't failed every single year for the last 3 decades. But we get the stories every year right ahead of a price increase. And I think, yeah, you guys are setting this up for your planned price increase. And then if you confront somebody over it saying, "Hey, coffee harvest is a bumper crop. Why did the prices go up?" And then they say, "Well, our shareholders demand." Whereupon I usually say BS, because in many cases I am a shareholder. I haven't asked for that, and I'm not seeing a penny. It's going into the pockets of the management who are saying they're acting on behalf of the shareholders. So, although you can occasionally plumb things out about the real world, it's never satisfaction to do so. When you're world building, it's satisfying. The other thing is, you can create a world that has some facets that you'd like to see around you in real life. I don't know if I'd like to see magic that works on the D&D level of I point my finger and then the building blows up. I'm not sure I'd like that, because what if somebody comes along and blows up my building with me in it? But considering the implications of magic working, like, for instance, I get endless questions from Realms fans about, "Hey, so in the real world, the steam engine came along here and blah, blah, blah. And yet in the realms, they don't seem to have advanced over this 100-year period. Why aren't you? Because it's inevitable." No, it's not inevitable. Because real world history is full of mistakes, backtracks, happy coincidences. And in our real world, magic of the sort I've just mentioned doesn't exist. So, what is this inevitability you're talking about? History may go very differently. Um, so it's the satisfaction of exploring ideas and trying things, and also finding out about yourself. Do
Hmm.
you like ruling?
Hmm.
Do you like maintaining something? Do you like the attention to detail? And I do like the attention to detail, and that's another thing that you get from world building. Because if you've missed something, some fan in this era of instant communications via the internet will tell you. They will ask you about the geology of something, or why this happened and not that. And in order to give them an in-game answer, you have to think about it and create a little more. And I do that like constantly every day. I'm always working on the realms and adding little bits and pieces because people need it for their campaign. And I say, you can just make it up, like I do. They go, yeah, yeah, but what would you do? And I always respect that answer because they are looking for a common tapestry, that the setting is coherent and consistent for everybody using it.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean they are going to accept a straitjacket of, if I do this in my novel, it has to happen in your realms. They may disagree there, but they want to know that there is a one true realms out there that some poor slob, me, is working on, so that they have reference to it.
This is a very interesting point that I hadn't considered. So I've played in Daggerford. If I met
Yes,
a stranger who had also played in Daggerford,
yeah,
we would have a connection as long as we played the same Daggerford. Um, that
yeah,
that's really interesting. I hadn't actually thought of that. Okay, so that's the reason why people play in an internally consistent world, one which has a canon,
yes,
um, which isn't too much. You are the canon. I mean, do you feel like this is a responsibility that you have?
it is.
Has it kind of shifted to being almost more a responsibility? You don't have to answer this, of course, but
It's my life's work.
yeah.
It doesn't matter whether I want it to be or not. But you are correct in what you've just uttered, because from the very beginning of the published realms, cloisonne pins that you could wear became a thing right about when the realms got published as an official setting. And immediately fans started inundating TSR with requests for Harper pins, which Lorraine Williams, who was the CEO at the time, shot down on cost. No, we're not getting. Oh, we publish games and we publish fiction. We do not. No, we're not. We're not becoming the company that makes little pins, which is a ridiculous position to take, because as she was saying it, her own marketing department was creating pins for people to wear if they were part of the company at conventions. So it's like, oh, we aren't we? You know, you could have covered the cost of all of those staff pins by just selling these Harper pins, But anyway, but the mere fact that the people were requesting them over and over meant that very thing. There was a connection between you and somebody else who played in Daggerford. We wanted to be in the same way that people who will never set foot on a soccer field, a football field, will buy the scarf and the team colors and the or a t-shirt or whatever, a jersey, and they'll walk along the street wearing it to the local pub.
Mm,
They're not going to be an actual member of that football club.
mm,
They may be the wrong gender, the wrong age, the wrong physique. They may have a heart condition or a bad knee. They would never make the team. And yet they feel part of that family,
mm,
a clan.
mm,
And yeah, there's that there. And this is not specific to the realms. The number of Jedi and Sith and people wearing Starfleet Federation pins, and in fact reaching for them to use them as communicators, touching them because that's what they do in the newer versions of the TV show. They just unconsciously reach for them. And it's like, yeah, you are part of the gang,
mm.
so that is a thing.
And you've created that. Okay.
Gosh, it's all my fault. No.
No, it's very, I know if someone says I've played in Daggerford or I've gone into Undermountain, we automatically have a point of reference, a shared point of reference, irrespective of where people have come from. And I can suddenly I really understand fandom at its to an extent at its most extreme levels,
Hmm.
because that is a powerful year, very,
Oh
very
yeah,
powerful year.
and there is there's an old editorial cartoon. Newspapers in Canada have editorial cartoons like everywhere else, and there was an American president called LBJ, Lyndon B. Johnson, and um, they ridiculed him in a one-panel cartoon. They drew him as John Wayne, the actor, as a Marine. So in full combat fatigues, his chin strap dangling, he's standing on a pile of bodies at night. He's holding two Tommy guns, one in each hand, and he's firing wildly in all directions. And he's yelling into the night, "Why can't you all get along peaceable like?" Okay. And that translates to fandom in that fandoms will have furious arguments and battles internally. Star Wars, Star Trek, they fight like cats and dogs. And yet, what it means is this matters enough to you that you got all upset about it. You're going to die on this hill because you care about something that's totally imaginary, but it's something that you value in your life, in your brain, in your mental life. This matters enough to you that you care about whatever it is. Did Han shoot first or whatever, people care about such things deeply, and you go, really? It's all made up. But they don't want to hear that at that moment.
Mm,
They know that's true, but
mm,
they don't want to hear it
mm.
because they are attached. They place value in being part of this thing. And yeah, I there's one part of me that says, "Oh, heavy responsibility time," because yeah, I'm the father of the realms. Um, and on the other side of it, it's like, isn't it nice that people all over the world love this thing that I just made up when I was 5 and have been working on every day of my life since, and I'm now 66, and a half. So it's been a while. Um, which also means that the realms is getting pretty deep in lore in places, and we're not stopping.
Ed, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I really, really appreciate your time, especially during tech crises. Um,
No problem.
is there anything you want to say about anything that you're doing at the moment? I know you're doing quite interesting things, but is there anything you want to say about them?
Hmm. Okay. Let me just. Okay. As we speak, I am doing tons of stuff that I can't talk about from NDA perspective. In the realms, I am working on two projects. What do I have it here? Souls for the taking.
I love the zoom. The zoom was excellent right there.
It did it, not me. My computer did that.
Excellent
There we
computer.
go. Anyway, um, so that is a collaborative project I'm doing with Reese York, my co-writer, and a lot of other people at Visionary, we where we are getting around the prohibition on publishing fiction
Mm, mm,
at
mm.
at the DMs Guild by having a short novella, or legally not a novella, legally under the word count, and then having game lore material for everything in the story published in the same book. Okay, and that concerns three new characters, nobodies, in 1501 DR who are hired on as caravan guards. So when we meet them, they're just outside Scornubel, and they go through Scornubel and start north on the road, and that's all that we get to see in the story. And there will be sequels if that does well. I'm also working with Eric Mengi and the Mistmakers, and we're going to do source books of regions of the realms. We're going to go all over known Toril, starting with the Dale lands. There'll be 4 releases a year, one in each quarter, and the first 4 are all about the Dale lands. And it's like a general overview. Then there's one called Insights, as in we detail the inns, and so on. And we finish with adventures. So we're doing that. So that's one sort of thing I'm working on. Outside the realms, I'm working on Viking ruled Dublin, which really happened in the 700s DR, AD, excuse me, um, when the Vikings conquered what would become Dublin. Dublin was the Black Pool, it was a swamp. But Aclea, Athcliath, the Ford of the Hurdles, did exist, and they took it over and ruled it. So for another role-playing game called Fate of the Norns, which is there's no dice rolling, you weird runes out of a bag. I am detailing, along with the designer of Fate of the Norns, Andrew Volkowskis, the city, but I'm detailing it completely, every building.
Wow. I mean,
And
yeah. You said
yeah,
you said you like detail. Uh,
yeah. So 3.5 years so far, probably another 1.5 before we're finished. And every single building has at least one NPC. And because you can have social combat in this game, blackmail to you and me, uh, um, every single character has a dirty secret. So for each character, we have a proclivity. That's what their aims are in life, what their hobbies are, their characteristics, how to role play them. Do they have a nasal voice? Do they have a nervous laugh? Do they dry wash their hands like your stereotypical innkeeper? What? How to role play? And the dirty secret, which so you really know what they are. So I'm giving you a complete cast of characters for an entire city, which nobody's ever done before because it drinks time. So that's one thing I wanted to get done before I died. So those are the big projects.
um, but yeah, thank you very, very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your morning. Just about.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep. Yep. Morning. Yes.
All
Thank you
right.
very much. This was
Thank you.
fun.
Thank you. I appreciate
Okay.
it.
Pleasure.
Bye
Okay.
bye.
Bye.